2020 at 7:30 p.m. The first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I ask everyone to rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next is the approval of the agenda. I need a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve?
Motion by Mr. Fiorello, seconded by Mrs. Waters. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, 6-0. Please note for the record, Mr. Salvatore is not at the meeting tonight. Next is the student government report, item number A. Just for the, while we're setting up, I'd just like to acknowledge that our Councilor Mike Kinch, who is the school committee liaison, is here tonight, and we greatly appreciate that he's here. You're all set?
Good evening, everyone. My name is George Rocha, and I'm the junior class president.
And my name is Mary Faye Carr, and I'm the junior class vice president.
Last month, we returned from winter break and continued preparing for our annual winter ball, which was held on January 17th at Wright's Farm. 392 students attended at this dance, and this made it a fun and profitable fundraiser.
Yesterday, our class of 2021 held a fundraiser at Moe's Southwest Grill. Moe's donated 50% of all sales after they met their daily average sales. Because of our thorough advertising for this fundraiser in school and over social media, we were able to successfully raise around $1,100 for our class. This money will go towards funding our junior and senior proms.
This upcoming month, we will be beginning our annual Pennies for Patients fundraiser, in which we collect money to donate to patients fighting leukemia and lymphoma. Each advisory teacher in our school is given a donation box, and students and faculty are encouraged to donate.
We are encouraging the entire school community to be involved by spreading the word throughout the town of Cumberland. Last year, we raised approximately $3,000 and are aiming to raise $10,000 this year through better advertising on social media and in school. Therefore, all donations are greatly appreciated.
Thank you all for your time, and have a nice evening.
Thank you. All right, next is our consent agenda. We have approval of minutes from the regular meeting of February 13th, 2020, and the approval of the minutes from the executive session of February 13th, 2020. I need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mrs. Waters,
Second.
second by Mrs. Friedman. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, 6-0. Thank you. And then we have report out of executive session meeting on February 27, 2020. There were no votes taken during that meeting, and I need a motion to seal the minutes.
Motion to seal minutes.
Motion by Mrs. Waters to seal the minutes, second by Mrs. Friedman. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, 6-0. Next is the superintendent's report, Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to give everyone an update on the school calendar. I know that everyone is anxious to get an idea about what the school calendar is going to be so that they can make their vacation plans and accordingly. The only reason that we have not put one of the options or put the options up for a vote by the school committee is because there is some uncertainty around any construction that might be taking place this summer. So we might need a little more time in the summer to get that work done, and we may need some time during the Christmas break. So until we have a better idea of what the plan will be, and we should know within the next couple of weeks, until we have a better idea of what the plan for construction will be, I think we need to hold off. And just so that you know, I was talking to Cindy Shabbat, who does a great deal of work on this, and she's the one who actually submits the calendar that you all approve to the Department of Ed. And I was curious as to what the timeline was for districts to submit their approved calendar, and we don't really need to get that done until April or May, I think she said May. So we have some time, but I'm sure you all know that people are anxious already to start making some plans. So once we have a better feel about the timeline for construction, we'll be able to make a decision. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you.
Second item is we have Heather Delfino is here this evening, and we have asked Heather to come and give us an update on how the pathways are going. We have a number of students in the high school that are interested in the pathways. In fact, I'm really excited about the number of students taking advantage of these opportunities. And we also have students from outside of the district who are interested in taking advantage of the pathways that Cumberland has to offer. But I do think, and you know, it's interesting, when we first started talking about creating pathways, I recall stating to you on several occasions that the most important thing that we need to do is to make sure that we keep our kids here. So we have several hundred students who are taking advantage of these pathways, and you know, I think it's really important that we have these offerings for our students, because my concern would be if we didn't have them, you know, would they be interested in going to another school that does have the pathways that they're interested in. So Heather and several teachers at the high school, along with other members of the administration, have done a really good job of generating some excitement and interest in these pathways. And the teachers are really good. I mean, they're really good and really into this, and students are responding. So with that, I will turn it over to Heather. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. So thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to highlight some of the great work that the CTE teachers and our industry partners are doing to support these CTE programs. So some of the topics that I'm going to talk about in this presentation, we're going to talk about the past year in terms of numbers. So we're going to talk about program offerings, enrollments, and the certifications or credentials that we are providing to our students. We'll talk about funding sources. As these programs are growing, there have been a lot of questions about funding and continued support, new opportunities that have been embedded for this current school year, 1920, and then what the future is going to look like looking ahead the next couple of years. So in looking at our program growth from last year until this year, so last year we had 5 state-approved RIDE programs, with the business being the newest, and 2 LEA or local programs that were not yet state-approved. This year we are adding 3 new LEA-endorsed pathways. So digital communications and marketing, environmental science and renewable energy, and the performing arts. So these programs are being added with our current courses and our current faculty. There are no additional resources that are required for these courses in these programs right here. And looking at enrollment, so looking at this year's freshmen, we had 108 incoming freshmen into this school year. So we're looking at the numbers being the same for freshmen applying to the programs and being enrolled in the programs, but our overall programs are seeing significant growth because our senior and junior cohorts were small when we first started out. So we're graduating 20-something seniors this year, but we're seeing overall about 100 student increase, I believe that is, from 170 to 267. So looking about 100 student increase from last year to this year. And then we are also increasing our number of out-of-district students. So this current school year, we have 4 out-of-district students. To date, we have approved, or we have taken 13 applications. We have 9 that are still pending. There are components of the application that we're still waiting to receive. And we do have a resident student who's been attending BVP, who is now electing to come to a Cumberland Public School because of the pathway options. Because the acceptance process is such a big deal to some students, especially with out-of-district students, this idea came from one of our school counselors: make it new, make it exciting, make it memorable. So Mr. Lima's digital media literacy class, he set out a project: can you please make an acceptance video for Mrs. Delfino by Friday? He gave them 1 week. It was a very short window. But this is what they came up with. It's phenomenal. So because it was such a short window that they had to create it, there is a lot of reel from sports with previous projects they had done. So we understood that going into this, and we will revise it, come up with some newer versions of it. But I just wanted to highlight this because this is incredible work that was done by the students in a very short timeline. So they did a great job making the video, but in addition to the content, one of the things that we try and embed in the students are those soft skills. So the initiative, time management, professionalism, collaboration, and leadership. And these students did a fantastic job working with the CTE teachers and working with me, say, what's the product that you're looking for? Does this meet your criteria? And what can I do to improve it? And they were fantastic, especially in such a short time frame. We were really impressed.
I just want to add,
Yeah.
you sent this out just after I had come back from the Rutgers Admitted Students Day, where they showed a video like this, and this reminded me of, I mean, seriously, the quality was similar to the one I had seen at Rutgers.
They did a
And
phenomenal job.
I was
And
really impressed, and I know you said, I know they did it based on footage that they had.
They ran out and
so
got some new
as
ones,
you-
but-
As you move forward, you know, I'm sure you think about girls' sports and other things that you could incorporate
Absolutely.
into there, but it was really, really great.
They did a phenomenal job, especially in that window. So another one that I want to talk about were our certifications. So the state requires certain certifications and industry credentials in order to leave a pathway and be considered a pathway completer. We're seeing a huge growth not just in our CTE graduates as they're going through, but in the number of certifications that we are providing. So last year, because it was the first year that we OSHA trained our students, we had to do juniors and seniors together. So junior and senior cohort, there were 37 students total. But this year is just juniors, because this year's senior course has already received that OSHA 10, and we're looking at 34 new OSHA certificates that students will receive by the end of March. Project Lead the Way, still very consistent. That program's been around for a while. Our NOCTI certifications, we have a 100% passing rate on that industry test. And we also added this year the QuickBooks certification for our business students. And looking at post-secondary credits, we've added over 50 post-secondary credits for students. Going into the following year, we have 3 new courses that are aligned to URI that will offer additional credits for free for students. 2 in our business pathway and 1 in our computer science pathway. So we'll expect to see even more growth in those free college credits that students are leaving with. In terms of funding, a lot of our funding comes from a variety of sources. So we have the federal Perkins money. We have CTE categorical funding, which is funding we receive per student, and that number is based upon what program they're in. The high-cost programs like engineering receive a little bit more money than some of the lower-cost programs like law and public safety, but that's some of the money that's coming through. We do apply for a budget in the budget season. We are applying for grants, so we recently submitted the CS4RI application for the grant this past Monday. It's a grant that will take our current program, which is aligned to URI, but it will also embed some work-based learning that will be supported by the state. So they will help us with transportation for students, with getting industry partners into the classroom. It comes with stipends for teacher professional development, in addition to $20,000 for upgrades and equipment for the classroom. So it's a wonderful opportunity. We're crossing our fingers that we get that opportunity. In addition to that, the last one would be that out-of-district tuition, which hasn't been our primary focus, but it's definitely an added benefit when you have programs like this that do bring cost with them, that anyone from out-of-district that's tuitioned in, that is definitely a big help. There's a lot of numbers here, but this is what the categorical funding looks like. So last year we received $18,000 for the students based upon our enrollment the year before. We're projected to get just under $30,000 this year, and the following year just under 60, just looking at the program growth and then how many students are in each program and what that categorical reimbursement rate is from the state. There have been a lot of new opportunities. The teachers have worked really, really hard this year. Their focus has been to create authentic work-based learning opportunities for students. So it's really important that in a career and tech program, they're not just getting the content knowledge, but they're also getting that hands-on work experience. So this year, Sergeant Mercado from the Rhode Island Army National Guard reached out to us with an idea. So he and Sergeant Dennis Mendez proposed a simulated mass casualty incident for our biomedical science students, our law and public safety students. We have invited our EMT students, the media students, and our theater students. So it's going to be a simulated natural gas explosion in the cafeteria. So the students have had their first 2 training sessions already. They've learned about bleeding control, general triage, how to identify different burns, the rule of 9s. I learned a lot about burn control. And then going forward, they're going to talk about different ways to transport patients, how to stage a triage area, and our partners with that are the the Rhode Island Army National Guard, Cumberland EMS. We're reaching out to the Cumberland Police Department. NBC 10 is going to mentor our media students, and we're trying to get as many industry partners into that event as possible to make it as realistic as possible and meaningful to the students. When we had our last training on Tuesday, someone from RIDE came to visit. He was really impressed, and he asked us to present this out at our next statewide advisory board meeting. So later on in March, Sergeant Mendez and I are going to present this event and how the students are participating, so that the hope would be that other schools can adopt a similar model. We also started working with BrainCo with our engineering and IT students, so we were able to purchase at a significant discount robotic arms. So the students will be working about how to code it, how to create it, how to join it so that people can actually use it. They're really cool opportunities. We purchased 10. We're hoping to purchase some more in the future. There was recently an EMT article in The Breeze. The Valley Breeze came out and interviewed some of our students, asked Superintendent Mitchell a couple of questions about how the EMT program has been beneficial to students in and out of the pathways. We've built our capstone courses, and one of the great things that Mr. Stead has been able to do with the engineering students is give back to the community. So a lot of the projects that our engineering students are doing are benefiting other students. So we have a student at the high school with a mobility goal. He doesn't like using his walker, but he's motivated by music and the Wheels on the Bus video on an iPad. So they're creating a stand for the iPad so that as long as the wheels on his walker are turning, the video will keep playing, and if he stops moving, the video will stop to help the student earn his mobility goal and work every day. We also have a student who's unable to use his Chromebook because of mobility issues, so they've created a giant button so that he can still participate in class with a big button instead of the little keys. We have another student who needs an elevated surface. It's really old. He has a hard time using it, so they're building him a new one that has plexiglass and it's backlit. So it's strong enough to support his weight, but it's backlit so he can also see what he's doing at the same time. We're working on some more promotional materials from that digital media course in addition to the video. We asked that they put out 15 to 30-second snippets that we could put on social media just for those quick highlights. In the Prepare Our Eye internship, we have 18 students being interviewed on Tuesday for that paid summer internship through Prepare Our Eye. So they're coming out and doing group interviews with those 18 students on Tuesday, which is fantastic. So what's brand new is the accountability piece of CTE. So last year, we had kids in the programs, we tracked them ourselves. So it was something that we just did in-house. Now RIDE is pulling all of this data. So they want to know how many students are in which programs. They want to ensure that they are completing the proper courses and that they are earning all of their credentials. So Marguerite has been extremely helpful with helping us navigate all of that in Aspen. She's helped code all of the courses. She showed me how to input all of their certification tests, their OSHA, all of that. So when RIDE extracts the data, they can see how many students we have, who's on track for a completion, and then when they are done, they will be identified as completers, and this is going to be a part of our school classification. So it hasn't been in the past, but going forward, it'll be a part of the school report card. So looking at potential future programs, we would like to see some of our current LEA programs become CTE programs. We felt that we weren't yet ready for that state approval process, but we really feel that the digital communications and marketing and the environmental science one really have potential for CTE programs. So we'd like to work on the work-based learning in those, bring it forward possibly in the next 18 months. And we're still floating around the ideas of the culinary arts. There's a lot of community support and the education and human development program as well. So in order to get the support, outreach is a huge thing. So our CTE night's coming up. It's on March 19th from 6 to 7 in the auditorium. We're gonna run it similar to what we had last year. So we've been sending home information to newly accepted students. We put stuff out to the community, hoping to gain some interest and get some people in the door so they can see what all these programs are about. There's also a statewide summit for adults. It's not just for educators. It's for school committee members, administrators, and business people as well. It's on 328 at Rick. So this is an annual summit. What they're doing differently this year is they're having the adult one on a Saturday and there's going to be a student version of it on a school day, and the state will provide transportation to any students who are interested. They're still working out the logistics of that, but the adult one is an amazing opportunity to network, learn about these programs and the investment that they are, but the outcomes that you see as well for students. Any questions? All right.
Thank you. That was really informative. So I have a few questions, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
How do we decide which pathways to consider adding?
So what we would do is we would look, because if you want to add a CTE pathway, you want it to be approved by the state. So you would look to see what the identified career sectors are that are priority sectors that have been identified by the Governor's Workforce Board, and you'd build backwards from there. So they've identified 40 or 50 priority sectors. You'd look at your surrounding region, say, is there a niche for this, or is this already being handled by a different school, and then determine what the need is based upon that.
Okay, and do you have a sense of how many we could actually handle? Like, is there such a thing that we could have more than we could execute on?
And that happens. So we visited some schools where they've dropped programs, but I think if we have the courses in our program of studies, and if we have the faculty members to teach them, I think it makes sense to put all of that together and create a sequence of courses that also embeds the work-based learning in the credentials. So if we have all of the resources, why not provide those opportunities to students?
Okay, and a concern I think we heard in the beginning was that there's potential for a negative impact on non-CTE students around course availability. You know, being able to get into certain courses because CTE students, I don't, you can validate if this is true or not. CTE students get first dibs on courses that are in their pathway?
So
and-
they're priority scheduled, which means that when we go through the scheduling process, we want to make sure that our CTE students get the courses they need to complete the course sequence. But when we do the scheduling process, it is a student-centered schedule. So the student requests drive how many sections we create. So if we have 29 requests for a class where the cap is 26, we're going to look at having 2 sections of that class, because the students drive the scheduling process. It's not vice versa. It's not, we have this many teachers, let's squeeze them in the classes that we can offer. The students drive the process, and the schedules are created around that.
Okay, and then I have one last question.
Absolutely.
I'll lose my question. Do you have a sense of what percentage of the students are going on to, say, 4-year colleges versus going directly into the workforce?
From CTE?
Yeah.
We don't have data on that. It is still so new. Last year, we didn't graduate that many seniors. The majority of them were biomed. I sat through senior presentations this past round. 4 of the 5 students were CTE, and they were it was in a science room, so they were biomed students. And of the 5 students, all 5 were going to college to study some sort of medical science. A bunch of them were going to the Mass College of Pharmacy. So they were pursuing that as a career, but I happened to be with a science teacher in a science room.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I have some questions.
Yes.
Regarding the out-of-district students that may or may not be coming to the district, how is that working administratively? Is there like a deadline for them to let
them
you
to
know if
decide
they're
to
coming?
enroll?
or-
So they don't have a deadline to enroll because they need to finish out their school year, and we want to make sure that their final transcript for this year still meets their criteria. So when they're accepted, they're conditionally accepted, meaning that throughout the remainder of the year, they continue to meet that acceptance criteria. So in talking to the parents, I tell them to finish out the year strong. We're going to look at their records again, and they can come and enroll in the summer. But they're welcome to come meet with a school counselor in the meantime. A lot of them have reached out with scheduling questions. We do already have superintendent approvals for 2. So once we get that superintendent approval, we feel that's when that student is going to come because they've gone through that far. Did that answer your question?
It does, yeah. And then you discussed the simulation type of thing. I find that really exciting. How long of an event is that? Is that like a week-long thing, or is it a day?
So there are 3 trainings. Each training was during a long block and then into advisory. So it was just an extended class period.
Okay.
Then the last training will be a walkthrough, so it'll be 2 periods long. And then the day of the event will be from 7:15 until lunch block. So there'll be a little bit of setup. The event will probably run about 90 minutes. And then we're going to take the students into the auditorium to debrief, talk about the experience, how they responded.
Okay, thank you. It reminds me, I'm trying to remember, I think it's, oh, never mind. I'll call you when I remember. Thank you.
It's,
You're welcome.
Heather, I had a conversation today, in fact, with Carl Chuli. Some of you may know Carl. Carl is he is our school-based coordinator, and Carl's position is that position is funded by Career and Tech money. So we're a part of the Woonsocket Career and Tech, and all of the districts that are a part of the Woonsocket Career and Tech, Lincoln is one, Smithfield is another, I think Situate might be another. All of the districts that are a part of the Woonsocket Career and Tech, we all have a school-based coordinator, and that position is funded by Career and Tech money. I had a conversation with Carl today, and Carl is a retired teacher at the Career and Tech Center, so he is very knowledgeable about Career and Tech, and he is incredibly resourceful. So, for example, he has some sort of a connection where we're going to be able to get robotic arms that will be used by our robotics pathway. And he talked about, I forget what else he was talking about today, that he is getting access to, that we're very fortunate to get. But the thing that I wanted to mention was this. There's a gentleman by the name of Paul Williams, who he works at RIDE, and he's one of the leaders of Career and Tech at the Department of Ed, and he had a meeting with Carl, and he just randomly asked Carl if he could visit some of our programs where they are implementing pathways. So no one knew that the guy was going to be visiting classrooms, and he actually went into Mike Stead's classroom. I think he went into a couple different classrooms, but he went into Mike Stead's class, and those students have been working on robots. So they were actually just, an unannounced visit. He got a chance to see what these students were doing. And the thing that I want to mention is that he was incredibly impressed. And I believe that Paul is one of the individuals who will play a key role in deciding who gets the grant money, because I believe it is a competitive grant, right?
It is, there are only 20 grants awarded,
Yeah.
10 control schools and 10 work-based learning
So
schools.
I think that his random visit is going to help us in the long run. So, and I think the most important thing is that there's some really good work going on. Imagine being a student and learning how to build a robot. I mean, I can't imagine anything more applicable to a potential career than having an opportunity in high school to do something like that. So, so that's one thing. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, and I know there's always concern about this sort of thing, but when I was the principal of Charahoe High School, we had a Career and Tech Center. 80% of those students went on to higher ed. So tremendous opportunities, and I just wanted to mention that as well. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Next is report of standing committees, payment of bills. There are no payment of bills this week. Mr. Salvatore is not here, but there were no payment of bills. There was no fiscal meeting. So we'll move right down to item number C, Policy and Procedures Subcommittee update. Mr. Fiorello?
Policies and procedures did meet the other day. We passed 3 new policies, J22, I'm sorry, not new policies, a couple of amended policies. The administration of Narcan, the new Equal Opportunity and Affirmative Action, which used to be the Affirmative Action Plan policy, and the brand new Smoke and Tobacco Free Schools. These will all be discussed further on into the on the agenda. I will discuss smoke and tobacco-free schools now, though, because we just said we're going to have a reading later. By state law, we are required to have a policy on smoke and tobacco-free schools. So writing this policy, and I want to thank Ms. Duncanson for helping crafting this policy with me. We kept the policy very succinct. We basically just laid out that no adult, no child or student can use any kind of tobacco, nicotine product, any kind of smoking, vaping product on any, in any building, any school bus, any school vehicle, any rented property, any place that the school is holding a function. It is completely smoke-free. What this will also require, once we pass the policy, although there's no reason to wait, is there is, Mr. Mitchell, signage available from the Department of Health that they would like us to post around the different campuses. Also, this policy would also does carve out a little section for adults to be able to use any kind of a smoking cessation product, like a patch of any kind. That was one of the recommendations from a nonprofit that submitted a template for this kind of a policy. So we will have a reading later, and then in a couple of weeks we'll be able to vote on that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fiorello. Next is Achievement Communications Subcommittee update.
The Achievement and Communications Subcommittee met on Tuesday night with one primary agenda topic, which was to review the achievement plan for BF Norton. BF Norton has shown some considerable positive growth in their RICAS results on both math and ELA, statistically significant growth as kind of identified by RIDE. So the administration met with us to go over their plan about where they are and where they want to go. And this is also especially impressive considering that BF Norton, has some challenging student demographics. One of which is that 49% of the students there are on free or reduced lunch, and there are a number of other issues. But because of their data-driven analysis and their laser focus on achievement, they really have been able to make some impressive gains. So it was really helpful for us to hear and to see what the teachers are doing, the administration is doing to really drive achievement at BF Norton. And like we've said before, our RICAS results are not, they happen on purpose. They don't happen by accident. And it's because our administrators, our teachers, they're laser focused and they're really doing things to help all students reach their achievement goals. So it was a really impressive presentation.
Thank you. Next is the District Health and Wellness Subcommittee update. Mrs. Bernard?
Yes, thank you. So our next meeting is Thursday, March 5th at 4 p.m. It will be taking place in room T319 in the Trans Building. We will not be having a regularly scheduled meeting. We are actually hosting Kyle Quadros from TILO. He has been introduced to us previously in the year with a collaboration with the town, OCYL, and now coming to the district. TILO was founded to reduce and prevent the effects of toxic stress, ideally focusing on childhood toxic stress. So some of the areas that TILO does support include trauma education, mental health, behavioral health, transforming school culture and climate, and culturally responsive training. And so again, they'll be here next Thursday. And so we are set out the invitation today. So if anybody who'd like to attend, we'd like to see you there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is comments from the public. If there's anyone here that would like to address the school committee, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to public hearings. Reading of amended policies. J22, Administration of Naloxone, Narcan, Mr. Fiorello. You'd like that read into the record?
Please.
Next is A3, Equal Opportunity and Affirmative Action, formerly G1, Affirmative Action Plan. Would like that be read into the record as well. and reading of new policies. The first reading, A4, smoke and tobacco-free schools, which Mr. Fiorello just gave a brief update about. If anyone has a comment they would like to speak to us about, they can address us in regards to those items. Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to new business. We have discussion and or vote on superintendent's recommendation for non-renewal of 5 non-tenured teachers. We need to have a motion so we can amend that.
Motion to amend.
Motion by Mr. Collins to amend it to 4. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fiorello. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, 6-0. Next is, so we have a discussion and a vote on superintendent's recommendation for 4 non-renewal, non-tenured teachers. We need a motion to approve. Motion by Mr. Collins to approve. Seconded by?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Friedman. All in favor on the amended business? All in favor? Ayes have it, 6-0. I'm sorry, we were gonna read those off, right? So we have teacher number A. I need a motion to non-renew teacher number A. Motion by Mr. Collins,
Second.
second by Mr. Fiorello. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, 6-0. Next is teacher B. I need a motion on teacher number B. Motion by Mr. Collins to non-renew. Second by Mr. Fiorello. All in favor? Aye. Ayes have it, 6-0. Next is item number C. I need a motion to non-renew teacher. Motion by Mr. Collins to non-renew, seconded by
Second.
Mr. Fiorello and Mrs. Friedman. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, 6-0. And finally, teacher number D. I need a motion to non-renew. Motion to non-renew by Mr. Collins. Second by Mrs. Waters. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, 6-0. Thank you on that item. Okay, next is discussion and a vote to approve amended policies, item number A3, equal opportunity and affirmative action plan, formerly G1. Mr. Fiorello.
Yes, as I previously mentioned, this is a major rewrite of the old policy. I'm sorry, I'm just looking for my notes here.
It looks like.
The first thing I wanted to do is take it out of the personnel section and move it to the foundations and basic commitments, which I believe equal opportunity and affirmative action falls under. We kind of expanded this policy so it doesn't just deal with faculty or the hiring of contractors under certain federal and state laws, but it now applies to every student, every staff member, every parent, so that they can expect that they are going to be treated with equal respect and dignity, regardless of their background or what have you. I believe this is a good policy, and we've also kind of generalized certain parts of it so that we won't need to update it every couple of years. We don't mention, like to say this, for instance, the superintendent by name, we just mention the superintendent, or if there is a claim against the superintendent, it would automatically be filed with the HR director. Everything else is just state and federal agencies that people can also file complaints with. I believe this is a good policy, and I want to thank Mr. Adams for his help with this. So I would make a motion to approve this policy.
Mr. Fiorello makes a motion to approve the new A3 equal opportunity and affirmative action plan. Second by Mrs. Waters. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, 6-0. Next is J22, administration of Narcan. Mr. Fiorello.
Yeah, you may remember this policy was actually amended back in December. We noticed, or I should say Dr. Santa noticed, that there was essentially a typo. And it mentioned junior high schools, which of course Cumberland does not utilize the junior high school style. So we just kind of had to add elementary schools, remove the junior high schools. I also took the opportunity to remove the language stating the original House and Senate bill numbers, because we normally don't do that. We just put into the policy the Rhode Island General Law of 16-21-35 that spells out the use of Narcan. So just to be clear, the Narcan is going to be supplied at each elementary school, each middle school, and the high school. And I would make a motion to approve.
Mr. Fiorello makes a motion to approve the new J-22. Second by Mrs. Waters. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Ayes have that, 6-0. Next is discussion and a vote to approve the first reading of policy A4, smoke and tobacco-free schools. Mr. Fiorello, you want that just read into the record?
Please.
So Mr. Fiorello gave us a brief explanation. I need a motion to, actually, we just automatically do it, read it into the record, A4.
Yes, because per our policy on creating policy, we need to have 2 readings before we actually take a vote on it. So we'll
Correct.
vote on it in 2 weeks.
All right, next is personnel recommendations. Katie, you gonna take this? Welcome.
Thank you. So there are 3 items on tonight. First is a resignation. I request the advice and consent of the school committee for the resignation of Nancy Dan Durand, English teacher at Cumberland High School, effective June 30th, 2020, after 18 years of service.
Need a motion to approve the resignation of Nancy Danduran? Motion by Mr. Collins. Second by Mrs. Waters. All in favor? Aye. Ayes have it, 6-0.
I request the advice and consent of the school committee on the FMLA leave of Sabra Brannan, special educator at JJM Cumberland Hills School, with an anticipated leave date of April 20th, 2020 through the remainder of the 1920 school year.
Okay, we have a request for leave of absence for Sandra Brannon. Need a motion? Motion by Mr. Collins. Second by Mrs. Waters. All in favor? Aye. Ayes have it, 6-0. Next is coaching.
Thank you. And finally, I have a request for the advice and consent of the school committee for an appointment to the tennis boys junior varsity position of Brandon Hanaway.
Motion to approve Brandon Hanaway as the tennis for the boys junior varsity. Motion by Mr. Collins. Second by Mrs. Waters. For discussion,
There's
go
still
ahead.
several vacancies for lacrosse. Is there any movement on hiring coaches for?
I'll have to connect with Mr. Blanchard. I know that he's been working hard on that. I'll connect with him tomorrow.
Okay.
All in favor? Opposed? Passes 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is school committee comments, school liaison reports. Anyone have any comments? Mr. Fiorello?
I've got 2 comments, actually. First is Reading Week is next week. A lot of schools are having celebrations of different types. I'm hoping that everyone will be able to avail themselves of the opportunity to be able to read in classrooms. I know that it's very difficult for most. It's one of my favorite things to do of the school year. So I'm sure I'll see Mr. Mitchell at some point. Also, I would like to thank former school committee member of many years ago, Tom Letourneau. He stepped up and donated a very nice camera with many accessories, and actually took the time to print out the instruction manual on his personal printer for a donation to the B.F. Norton School, which had been looking for a digital camera for some time. And Mr. Letourneau saw my post on Facebook at one point, and he reached out to me. So thank you, Mr. Letourneau. The B.F. Norton PTO is very thankful.
Anyone else? I would just like, go ahead.
I just have one comment. I received an email, all the parents at NCMS received an email from Mrs. Coughlin regarding fundraising. A lot of the schools right now are going through a lot of fundraising drives, and this is the time of year, we're coming into the time of year where field trips used to be a reality. So I just want to reinforce to the public that these fundraisers are absolutely imperative right now, given the state mandates that, we essentially can't fund, we have to fund our own school trips, so we're so reliant on the PTO. So any involvement, whether it's a batch of cookie dough, or there's all sorts of fundraisers going on right now. And then if you have a child in the school and you have an idea of a successful fundraiser, they're very receptive. It's not just at NCMAS community, Ashton, all the schools are really have drives going on right now. So we would encourage you to support your local school.
Great. All right, and finally, last night, or yesterday afternoon, we had 71 people register to get the shingles vaccine here at the high school. And the group told me as of 4:35, only 4 people had missed their appointments, which is pretty good because you can't get the vaccine right now, no matter how long you wait. And this company was able to get us the 71, which is registered. There's a lot of members of the school family here are walking around with sore right shoulders because of the shot, but I just wanted to point out it was a good turnout for 71 people to come and get it where you couldn't get it before. Anyone else?
I just have one more thing.
Go ahead.
One other thing, you can't help but open up the news, and the number one story being the coronavirus. I mean, the president spoke yesterday, so I was wondering if Mr. Mitchell might give us an update on the worst-case scenario, what the plan would be if Cumberland was stricken with this pandemic, and what we're working on right now.
Right, thank you. I'm glad you mentioned that, because there clearly is raised awareness around this whole issue. And I have been personally contacted, this week I contacted the Department of Health, the Rhode Island Department of Ed, and the Superintendent's Association. It seems to me that the thing that would be most advantageous is to have, some sort of guidance, one voice in responding to this issue. And I think there is some interest in doing that. And I know that at our superintendent's meeting a week from today, that is going to be a topic for discussion. However, I have been receiving public health advisories from the Rhode Island Department of Ed, and I've been sharing that information with school nurse teachers and administrators. And there's some helpful information in there, and it really is, as we all know, really a lot of common sense recommendations. Frequently washing hands. Don't touch your eyes. Don't share your food with anyone. Though you make sure that you're that you're washing your hands frequently and what have you. So I will definitely, I'll get something out. And the other thing I wanted to mention is the school department, even long before the coronavirus has really been in the news, we have a serious flu issue in Rhode Island. So weeks ago, we started this protocol where we are spraying all kinds of surfaces where little hands and big hands touch doorknobs and desktops and those kinds of things. So we have been extra vigilant about making sure that surfaces are disinfected. So we have been doing that over the last several weeks anyway because of the flu virus, and we have purchased some additional equipment to help us with that. So, for example, if we're using this disinfectant that has to be sprayed onto tabletops and doorknobs and those kinds of things. And there's a lot of surface area in the high school, so we actually purchased a backpack that allows us to disseminate a large volume of liquid at a time. So we have taken steps, and I do think people need some reassurance. We're starting to border on a little bit of hysteria, not a criticism, it's a reality. People are really concerned about this, but I've already drafted something, and we'll get some information out probably tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Do we have executive session tonight?
No, we do not, Mr.
We
Chairman.
need- Mr. Fiorello makes a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Waters. Mrs. Freeman, all in favor? Aye. Ayes have it, 6-0. Thank you and good night.